Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a new episode of my comic book corner, which I haven't done for a while. I went to my comic shop the other day and picked up all the stuff that they had for me, which was about 4 or 5 weeks worth of stuff. So a considerable amount, shall we say, to have a look at. So let's just get into it. Okay, yeah, so I'm probably going to start doing these a little bit more often now. We'll see how that goes. I say that now, but yeah, we don't know how it will pan out. Anyway, so first item I picked up was issue 1 of a new Wildcat series from DC. Now, Wildcats was formerly a Image comic, and then it moved over to become a DC title. I still see it as a I don't know, I still sort of visualize it as a Image title. That's how I knew it when it first came out, some time ago now, in the early days of Image, in the late 90s I believe it was, some time ago. Yeah, nice art within. Then we have an issue 2 of Wildcats. This one here is a Spawn variant cover, because there is a Batman and Spawn crossover comic that I'll come to very shortly that came out this week as well, and it sort of helps to promote that. Now, Batman's Spawn, Batman's DC, Spawn is Image, so it's a combination of both of those comic companies coming together. And it has been done before with Spawn and Batman. There were 2 meetings that they've had previously. And then we have issue 336 of Spawn. I'm big onto Spawn at the moment. Figures, comic. I am way behind on the comics, I will say that. So I'm picking up the compendium ones. Back in the day when Spawn first came out, I read it for about the first 100 issues. And then it fell by the wayside. And I've gone back and sort of picked up the compendiums. I've got the 4th one arriving probably midweek, and it contains 50 issues in it. There you got the character of Haunt. I got that figure. Yeah, Spawn is good. Spawn is good. So much so that, here we go, Batman and Spawn. Yes, McFarlane, Todd McFarlane, Greg Capullo, and McCaig. Image and DC crossover event. We'll have a look at the art in a minute, because I actually got 3 covers, 3 versions I picked up. Variant covers. Yeah, and the 3rd variant cover I picked up is actually a glow-in-the-dark cover where the moon and all this stuff here will glow, apparently. Not checked that out, but there we go. And the art inside, it's written by Todd McFarlane, pencils by Greg Capullo, and inks by Todd McFarlane. So Greg Capullo is very much an artist in the vein of Todd McFarlane. He has that, and obviously Todd McFarlane inking does give it more of a McFarlane-esque art, but it's great having Batman and Spawn, these 2 characters, come together again. And if there's ever a film that needs a reboot, it's this character. It really is. But yeah, so there we go. And then also I picked up, although I don't read Batman, I picked up issue 130 of Batman simply because it had this Spawn variant cover to it, which is a homage to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns comic cover with the lightning strike and Batman. Obviously Spawn wouldn't be present in that image. Yeah, so that's great. Let's have a look at what the artwork is like in a current Batman comic. I mean, to be fair to DC, they always get decent artists to draw Batman comics. There we go. There's I like that cover, actually, the reversal of that one. It's good. That's an advert inside. And then we have, keeping with that Spawn theme, issue 17 of King Spawn. There's a fair few Spawn comics at the moment. And I'm reading them all. Just like I said, I've had sort of like a sort of reintroduction to the character of recent years. And then we have Gunslinger. This is Gunslinger Spawn. Variant covers, two of the same comic. I loved both covers. That one's the Violator on there. And Gunslinger Spawn himself. And I do have a figure of Gunslinger Spawn. Yeah. It's got some decent art in it as well. And then we have Vampirella versus Red Sonja, issue 2. Decent cover. The one thing about Dynamite is they've not been pulled into this world where women are not allowed to look like women. They still give you, you know, Marvel have turned into, you know, they've gone through this phase of drawing characters like Captain Marvel, like they're androgynous, like you can't tell what sex they are, whether it's a boy or a girl, no shape, nothing like that. But Dynamite will give you covers. Vampirella Strikes, issue 7, give you covers like this, which is great. And then we have Vampirella Mind Warp, again from Dynamite. Dynamite, who has the Vampirella rights currently. They've had them for quite some time now. And then we have issue 10 of Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. Lovely cover on that one as well. Fantastic cover, actually. And then we have Immortal Red Sonja. And a variant cover for that Vampirella versus Red Sonja there with a photo cosplay cover. Yeah. And then we have The Mandalorian. Now I always say The Mandalorian, you know, it surprised me it took so long to give The Mandalorian a comic book, and then even more surprising that it's just essentially a movie adaptation version. So each issue is the episode story. And this is a character that should have his own, you know, standalone comic book with original stories, possibly set before we got introduced to him in the Mandalorian TV series. I don't know why they're not doing that. Do you remember Gargoyles, the TV series, the animated TV series from, I don't know, when was it, the early 90s maybe? Well, Dynamite Comics are now doing a comic book based upon that property. And yes, fantastic. Which is quite odd, really, because Disney own Gargoyles, don't they? And Disney own Marvel, but yet the comic books being done by Dynamite Comics, being outsourced to Dynamite. I don't know. So it does say Disney's Gargoyles there, so I don't know how that... You know, you'd have thought that maybe they would have Marvel do it. But I was intrigued when this was announced because I remember the Gargoyles TV series. It was very good, and a revisit of it in comic form. Fantastic. And I have a variant cover there, or a 1 in 10 variant cover. So there's only one of these for every 10 of these, if that makes sense. And then moving on, we have this thick here book that I picked up, which is Wildstorm 30th anniversary. Wildstorm being the Image imprint that went over to DC, and it's got a Gen 13 cover. Now Gen 13 is a comic, like I said, that was done by Image originally, and they actually done a movie of Gen 13. It was never released. It was never had an official release. An animated movie, not live action. And I have it on disc somewhere, but I can't be sure where it is at the moment. But I know that I have it. Then we have the coming together, issue 5 of the coming together of 2 horror movie franchises, that being the Army of Darkness, Evil Dead, and the Reanimator. Army of Darkness versus Reanimator. This is issue 5. Is this the final issue? Let's have a look. If I get past it, it is the final issue. Yes. Comes to an end in this yeah. I like the Army of Darkness in comic book form. It's a lot of fun. Let's see what adverts are going on at the back for upcoming stuff. Obviously there's Vampirella Strikes, issue 9 cover. Pretty damn good, the art on that. Then we have, what else do we have? A Vampirella versus Red Sonja cover. I'm getting Lucy Lawless vibes from that. Xena. But yeah. Which is another comic that Dynamite was doing at one point. Then we have issue 66 of Grim Fairy Tales. I've collected these from very first issue. I think very first issue is very rare comic book. Grim Fairy Tales. It's done by Zenoscope, which is a very small company, or it was a small company. They've grown quite big doing this stuff. The first issue is quite a rarity, really. A lot of the earlier issues are quite rare. And they take a lot of this sort of like Van Helsing there. These characters from, you know, sort of fairy tale lore and stuff like that, and do a little spin on them. Things like Robin Hood with a Y. Yeah, Van Helsing. Yeah, and you know, it's pretty good. Pretty good. Then we have issue 3 of Star Trek Lower Decks. Now, I don't generally read Star Trek comic books. I find sci-fi rather hard to consume in comic book form, but because of the nature of Lower Decks, the sort of comedic nature of the TV show and the art style of the TV show, it's very easy to put that into comic book form and give you stories based upon the Cerritos with this crew. Yeah, and I think this is I got a feeling this is the last issue. Yeah, until next time. Yeah. So there was only 3 issues, sort of reissue mini-series, so to speak. And then we have issue 8 of She-Hulk, everyone's favourite Marvel TV show, that people don't get because they don't know the comics. But yeah, She-Hulk has always been an enjoyable comic book. You know, bit different. And all new, all different Savage Avengers. Now I used to read Savage Avengers with the first run. Punisher was part of it, and when this run started, I didn't start reading it till a couple of issues ago, when which was issue 6, I believe, when we had the introduction of Jake Gallows into the fray. Now, Jake Gallows is the Punisher from the year 2099, from Marvel's 2099 imprint series. We saw down there. Character that was done an injustice towards the end of his time. He was unceremoniously killed off in this culmination of the 2099 universe. So it's great to see that character back. yeah, sort of future version of the Punisher. Basically, the story is that he found Frank Castle's war journal and carried on his work, which was great. So it's great to see him back, and it's great to see the Punisher holding a gun, which we don't get in the current run of the Punisher comic book. But we'll come to that in a little bit. Then we have issue 3 of the new Spider-Man series, which I am reading, primarily because Mark Bagley is back drawing. Mark Bagley is a very famous Spider-Man artist. He used to work on Spider-Man years ago. He then was the artist on Ultimate Spider-Man when that began. And yeah, he's always been synonymous with Spider-Man comic books. So it's, you know, there's a sort of nostalgic feel to reading a Spider-Man comic drawn by Mark Bagley. So that's always good. How long I'll keep with it, I don't know. If he leaves it, I'll probably leave it as well. My comic book loyalty only really lies to the Punisher. Beyond that, other characters do tend to come and go. But Punisher's after this one, and that is Predator, issue 5 of Marvel's new Predator comic. The final hunt begins. Dark Horse Comics used to publish the Predator and Aliens comics. They now fall under Marvel, because obviously Disney bought 20th Century Fox, Dark Horse stopped publishing, and Marvel started publishing. The thing with the Alien and the Predator comics is you haven't got a character to follow as such, other than any character that they introduce into the series. But yeah, you know. Okay, next up, like I said, we have the Punisher. Yes, issue 8. A few issues behind on this at the moment, reading them. Not been enamoured by this run of the Punisher, because he's working for the Hand. You know, he's got this silly skull on his chest that isn't. He's using swords and not guns, which is a big bone of contention to me, because of what that implies more than anything else. But at the end of this issue, Frank Castle, and people got excited by this, Frank Castle does again pick up a gun, which is great to a degree. However, this is what you get. You know, this glowing, this magic that's in him or whatever it is, this, you know, and he's got a gun, you know, with it coming out. The implication of that is what I don't like, is because for me it's taking the gun and making the gun unbelievable in his hands, if that makes sense. Like Disney doesn't want Marvel to be producing a Punisher comic where he's carrying a weapon. The bad guys are allowed to use guns, but he's not. That's what's been going on. It's all right with him having the sword, but it's the gun stuff that they're you know, I feel that they're against. And the use of the skull. The skull has been sort of appropriated by other parties, shall we say, outside of comic book, the realms of comic book, talking about like law enforcement, military, and hate groups. So you've got this new skull that just doesn't work, but I'm hoping that, fingers crossed, that the Punisher does go back to his original modus operandi, so to speak. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Anyway, next up we have issue 51 and 52 of The Walking Dead, which reprint The Walking Dead comics in colour. When they first came out, they were black and white comics. And I do have them all in black and white, but it's nice rereading them in colour. It gets me sort of reading the whole series again, falling in love with it again, and it gives it a new life, so to speak, even though, you know, I've got them again. And next up, as a big Transformers fan, issue 4 and 5 of Shattered Glass 2. Always enjoyable reading Transformers. You may have seen a photo in my community page where I'm sorting my new room out, and I've posted a photo of all the 100 hardback Transformer comic books that I've got, that republish or reprint everything from Marvel's original back in the 80s, Marvel UK, Marvel US, into the Dreamwave, I think it was Dreamwave side of it, and then IDW Comics. You know, it publishes, reprints everything from everyone. Yeah, which was great to see, and great to see Death's Head. You know, Marvel's character Death's Head, having those Death's Head stories in, because I did wonder if they would omit them from these books because of, you know, Marvel owning the character of Death's Head, who was conceived for Transformers but kept by Marvel. Long story. I should do a video on that character actually. Very intriguing history to that character. And anyway, next up we have issue 3 of the current Alien run. A Ripley-esque kind of a cover there. In fact, I think she's almost in the same pose as images we've seen of Ripley and Newt, but it's not. Alien Part 3 of 6, Icarus. And that's the problem, it all revolves around if you're enjoying the other characters within these comics. Because obviously the Predators and the Aliens are not really the characters. They're just there to serve the story. And they sort of falter, they live or foul on that premise of do you enjoy the setup and do you enjoy the characters currently in that setup. Only a couple more. And then I picked up this here just simply because of the cover. And it's Quinn Uncovered, Harley Quinn, but Crisis on Infinite Earths from years back from DC gave us this cover where Superman was holding the corpse of Supergirl. And it's been sort of reimagined, homaged here with Harley Quinn in hand. Yeah. And she's saying, need mouth to mouth. But this here is literally it's nothing more than a sort of reprint of covers that have been done for Harley Quinn. So it's kind of like a cover gallery issue, nothing to read, just art that has been done for different. Some of them are, you know, they're really good. You know, variant covers in there that have been done. So I can't really fault this. Harley Quinn with Poison Ivy. The Harley Quinn animated show is fantastic. It really is. I do enjoy it a lot. Hopefully the latest season will get a physical media release in the US that I can import. Yes, here's some homages to some classic Batman covers that you may or may not recognise. Killing Joke there. If you remember that Spawn cover that I said, that Batman Spawn cover that I said was a homage to Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, there's another one done there. It's sort of a homage to this, which this is actually the Frank Miller cover, but Harley Quinn's been put in there as well. Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. Doom Patrol back on. That's just an advert for Doom Patrol. Anyway, moving on to next. Only 2 more left. Don't worry. Then we have the latest issue of Ghost Rider. It's quite a striking cover. I quite like that. There's sort of charredness to the face in that, in the art style. I always enjoy Ghost Rider. Quite a difficult character to write for, but that brought me to this, and I picked this up, and it's a square-bound, thick Ghost Rider Danny Ketch. Now, Danny Ketch was the second iteration, essentially the second iteration of the Ghost Rider, if you don't want to include the original Ghost Rider, who wasn't a flaming... Do you know what I mean? Anyway, flaming motorcyclist Ghost Rider. He was the second Ghost Rider, who came about in the 90s when they revamped. And the 90s was a fantastic time for me for collecting comic books. That's where most of my nostalgia lies for comic books in that era. Much like with film, I suppose, not 90s, but you think to the past. And even though I still collect comics now and read comics, they're not as magical as they were back then. They're not as, you know, gripping as what they were. That might just be an age thing with me, and that back then it was more of a fresh hobby, and I was being introduced to new things. It might have been that, but anyway. So we have this here, which actually reprints the first 3 issues, and I do have them in their in their original form upstairs in a box somewhere. I say somewhere, there's a lot. To go through them is a big task. And this was my kind of, this was my Ghost Rider, shall we say. I was aware of Johnny Blaze. My brother used to read before me, would read the Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider. I knew Johnny Blaze in that sense. But here, this was where Ghost Rider worked for me. You know, he was... Instead of being in a jumpsuit, he was put in like a leather jacket, and you know, and the bike wasn't, you know, it was a bit more streamlined, shall we say, and the art was fantastic. Art by what's the guy's name? Javier Soltares, and inks by Mark Texiera, who in turn did, you know, was a comic book artist himself later on, and it, you know. The art captured my imagination, the design of the Ghost Rider. Let's see if we can find him. You know, just powerful, powerful stuff. Really well drawn, and you know, there was like a believability to the you know, to the skull now, which wasn't there before, and it just really worked for me. So going back and you know, revisiting this version of the Ghost Rider is fantastic. I don't know if Johnny Blaze or Danny Ketch, who I'd say is my favourite version. I know you have Robbie Reyes as well, with the car, the Ghost Rider car, and he was done justice in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series. I think that iteration of Ghost Rider really worked on screen. I wasn't happy when I first heard it was Robbie Reyes being done as opposed to a motorcyclist Ghost Rider, but yeah, you know what I mean, it worked on screen. And Ghost Rider's quite a difficult character to pull off. I think he works better in as a support character rather than a main in film, definitely. So that's the original sort of iteration of Ghost Rider, the Johnny Blaze one with a jumpsuit, and the sort of more chopper type of a motorbike. So I like the updated version, and a lot of the villains in this, they were quite scary, really. The villains that were created and introduced into the Ghost Rider comic, there was a darkness to it. It was fantastic. I'm talking about Ghost Rider a lot now. But yeah, so revisiting that Danny Ketch stuff with that is going to be fantastic. It's just cheaper to do that than the amount of time it'd take me to work through about 25 boxes of comics to try and find. And I'm not talking about comic long boxes. I'm talking about, you know, sort of shipping boxes for moving. Bloody hell, they're heavy as well. There's so many. I don't know what's going to happen to all this stuff when I pass. someone's going to get one hell of a lot of comics, and there might be some nice little surprises in there as well. Financially wise, I mean, monetarily. But there we go. So those are the pickups, you know, quite a big one. So I'll try and do this more regularly, so it keeps the video shorter, keeps down the amount that I'm showing, because that's quite a bit. It's a considerable amount. Anyway, I'm getting going because I've got a lot of reading to do. So I'll see you on the next one. Take care all, and